It was Charles Schulz, the writer of the cartoon Peanuts, who in one of those Peanuts, Snoopy the dog said, yesterday I was a dog, today I am a dog, tomorrow I'll probably still be a dog. And he sighed, there is so little hope for advancement. Now, when I was a boy, I grew up with a dog. His name was Richie. He was a crossbreed between a collie and an Alsatian, and he was a lovely dog. He was a big dog. He was a gentle dog. He got a big bark, but he was harmless in many regards. And his contentment seemed to be found in his bed. He'd twizzle around about 12 times before he actually settled down, but then he would settle down. It seemed to be in his food. So long as he's got his food, he was good and he was happy. And it seemed to be in him being able to get outside. If he'd got those three things, then Richie the dog was a good old boy and he was a happy, happy being. He was content with his lot. What the Google sermon this year, or what the Google review this year shows us, is that people are not like dogs. We are different to animals. There is a curiosity within the human psyche that causes us to want to search, to improve, and to get better. I guess we've known this for time immemorial, because down through the millennia and the centuries, different philosophers and people have spoken to this particular subject. The issue of searching, looking, inquiring, curiosity. I think, therefore I am, said Descartes. The unexamined life is not worth living, said Socrates. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars, said Oscar Wilde. And again, the words of Isaac Newton. I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy, playing on the seashore, and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. There is a curiosity that is an intrinsic part of the human condition that causes us to want to know and want to explore. Richie, my dog, he was not bothered about anything like that. He didn't look up at the stars and think, where did those stars come from? He didn't look at the tree and think, how does that tree grow? He didn't think about all of those things, not to my knowledge anyway. He was just happy with his winter lot, with his walks, and with his bed. And in that way, he was really content. But humanity is curious. It is both curious, and what the review shows us this year from Google is that humanity is both curious and also, at its best, compassionate. Now, the Facebook review, all of these social media platforms and search engines now seem to do their reviews at the end of the year. The Facebook review highlights several interesting things. Firstly, people came together in 2017 to react and talk about important moments and events that happened around the world. The top 3 moments that people discussed globally in 2017 were the International Women's Day. This was number 1 most talked about moment in 2017, doubling from last year, with people around the world talking, sharing, and posting in celebration of women and women's related issues. Super Bowl 51, and the Las Vegas violence. Secondly, people came together to support one another in times of crisis. 2017 was a difficult year with natural disasters and violence around the year, but it was inspiring to see people help each other when they needed it the most. The top 3 moments where we saw people come to each other's aids were the earthquake in Mexico, Hurricane Harvey, and One Love Manchester. The most viewed video and live broadcast on Facebook in 2017, this benefit concert generated over 80 million views and raised more than $450,000 for those affected in the Manchester terror attack. Finally, people used Facebook to get together in person. The top two ways people connected through these offline moments by creating events on Facebook were the total solar eclipse and the Women's March on DC on January the 21st. It brought over 500,000 people together through the largest Facebook event for a single cause in 2017. So that's what Facebook is telling us in terms of their review when they look at their statistics. But what about the Google review? What does the Google review have to say? Well, let's take a look at that on the screen.
To the families and friends of the victims, know that we'll do everything we can. We are Vegas strong.
No matter what we're going through, we still have to push forward.
Are you ready to shake up the world?
It takes an act of love to realize we are all in this together.
Made history tonight.
Look at that!
It's emotional. I can't explain why, but it is.
I'm asking that you guys join and mobilize with me.
I will say it right now out loud. Me too.
Me too.
Me too.
Me too.
Love you, right?
Put your hand back out, bro. You gonna shake it, bro. The things that make us different, those are our superpowers. Go out there and conquer the world. Because the world would not be as beautiful as it is if we weren't in it.
The website Digital Trends said, "How" is the theme of Google's 27-year in search video. The search giant's annual breakdown of the year's search trends. It's a video that celebrates humanity's constant need to question, to discover, and to help. Adweek.com said, "The Google review of the year shows how we got through the hell of 2017. In 2017, the world asked how. Questions like how to join the military, how to run for office, how to make a protest sign, how to be a good parent, how to be a firefighter were asked more than ever before. The topics of curiosity and compassion appear to be the underlying themes of the Google search for 2017. But it was noted by some as being a hell of a year. So how do we, the church, speak to curiosity and compassion? And how do we bring a little bit of heaven to people who are going through hell? How do we move forward? The role of the church is to bring context to life. It is to give understanding to feelings, transcendence to fear, and interpretation to experience. We are here to listen, not judge, to allow people to be heard, and when they have been heard, to help them navigate their experiences through a Christ-centered worldview. When people have been through a hell of a year, they don't need to have hell preached at them. They need to know how they can get through the hell that they're already living in. People need hope. The gospel is good news. So how do we bring hope? The prophetic voice of the church is to deal first and foremost with the issues of the heart. The church must first ascend politics before it engages politics. It must address the underlying issue of the human condition before it seeks to rectify human experience. Before you are a socialist, conservative, liberal, or rebel, whether you be black or white, rich or poor, male or female, gay or straight, whether you be PhD or first degree or no degree, Whether we be shopkeepers or shop workers, whether we be married mums, single dads, working mums, or retired, we are all, without exception, first and foremost, human beings. We are made in the image and the likeness of God. We have hope because we are born of hope, because we are each made by God. We are not here to push down, but to draw out and to call out that original glory, which is part of the Genesis story. You are better than you realized, more loved than you know, more valued than you've ever understood. When we speak to greatness, what we address is human dignity. We begin to open the window to the divine. We begin to see as King David saw when he wrote, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Because of this, and because of the terrible rise of mental illness, especially amongst the young in our country, going forward at Hope, our discipleship will give more attention to emotional well-being as part of a holistic spirituality. Our world is making people poorly, and this is at least in part because we undervalue the importance of the whole. We have not been taught how to look after our souls. Which brings me to the topic of curiosity. You are curious because you have a soul, and that soul is tied to mystery, and it's that what enables you to ponder and leads you to wonder. Wonder is the gift given to humanity that draws out our God-centered gaze, a gaze never expressed better than in the words of Augustine when he prayed, "Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you." The restlessness of the soul can take many forms, I believe, but curiosity is certainly one of its greatest. On viewing the solar eclipse, the lady cried, "It's emotional. I can't explain why, but it is." And amongst the searching of one of the most successful and wisest men who lived, King Solomon, we read his words, "He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the heart of men, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." But even though we cannot fathom it, it doesn't mean that we don't search. From the Genome Project, which mapped the whole human genome and will lead to revolutionary treatment of disease, was founded by Christian scientist and theistic evolutionist Francis Collins. To the entrepreneurial billionaire Elon Musk, who this month will launch the largest rocket since the Apollo program in the 60s from Cape Canaveral, which will have a combined thrust of 18 Boeing 747s at full thrust in his attempt to go to colonize Mars. Whether it is looking in to our DNA and our genes, or looking out to the universe that is beyond us, our curiosity is insatiable. We are born from mystery into mystery, and that mystery is at the heart of the human quest, a mystery unlocked, I believe, in Christ himself. Interestingly, the person of Jesus has found residence in the soul and speech of an unlikely prophet in recent times. Russell Brand, a former addict and wild child, said in a recent interview with Relevant magazine, "My personal feeling is the teachings of Christ are more relevant now than they've ever been." He went on in the interview to say these things. "My route to spirituality comes through addiction. So it comes from desperation and fear. And this sort of defeat, destruction, annihilation of self in a very humiliating way, I suppose. So I had no choice but to embrace spiritual life, but now I am grateful for this. It makes sense of my life. Because I come from a Christian culture, a lot of the language of prayer that I use is Christian. I say the Lord's Prayer every day. I try to connect with what those words mean. I connect with what the Father means. I connect to what wholeness means to me. I think about the relationship between forgiveness and being forgiven, and the impossibility of redemption until you are willing to forgive and let go. Brand says reciting the Lord's Prayer made him start thinking about what Jesus really meant by the words. One phrase in particular began to jump out to him: "Thy kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven." What does that idea for a world crippled by addiction to superficial fulfillment mean? I think continually about what Christ meant by the afterlife, he explains. And for me, it's that when you are disavowed of the illusion that the material will fulfill you, you enter the kingdom of heaven. A kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth. He references Jesus' command to the rich ruler in Matthew 19, who asks, "What good thing shall I do to have eternal life?" Brand says, referencing Christ's response, "Give away all your possessions and follow me." That's a pretty radical thing. Brand says the reason why this idea is so radical is because it strikes at the core of the values so many people secretly hold, that money and materialism can cure unhappiness. I think the reason that the economic arguments Christ offered are not promoted is because they are deeply at odds with the way we live, he explains. Instead of focusing on unhealthy patterns centered on self-fulfillment, the message of the gospel offers an alternative: caring for others and helping those in need. He goes on, "I've seen in many formats now, because I've played out the same pattern many times, the attachment to physical things. Physical behaviors or people will never make me happy. But service of others and values that are certainly found in Christianity will make me feel peace or make me feel happy. It's a lesson that's very hard to learn." I question what would happen if you had the strength of character to give up everything and just live in the service of love. Would you? I sort of rationalize why I don't do that. I don't have to. I can't. I've got a wife and a child and live in a capitalistic society and would just be vulnerable and exposed and torn up by reality. But of course, the spiritual perspective is, no, you will be carried there by grace. Now, for me, the most insightful comments of Brand are to be found in what he says of the person of Christ. He refers to continually thinking about what Christ meant by the afterlife and about Christ himself. He says, if Christ consciousness is not accessible to us, then what is the point of the story of Jesus, you know? He's just a sort of scriptural rock star, just an icon. Unless Christ is here, right now, in your heart, in your consciousness, then what is Christ? I ask the question, what indeed? If all we have is the political Christ or the public Christ, then what we have is a construct of religion that displays itself on equal terms to the powers of this world. We meet force with force, power with power, argument with argument. We play a game of getting the upper hand, and the one who holds the biggest hand wins the game. But as Erwin McManus said, it's not the one with the biggest hand that wins, but the one with the best story that wins. Sadly, over past decades, we've made better apologists than we have storytellers in the church, I feel. We have, in many quarters, learned how to win battles, but ended up losing wars. Millennials have left the church in their thousands, and Generation X never came. We could debate over why this is the case and draw numerous conclusions from our conversations. But one thing is clear: we have been losing the battle for the heart. Perhaps this is because we often approach our mission as if Christ came to win people, when actually he comes to woo them. He comes to connect with people where they are, whether that's the woman at the well, the fisherman by the sea, the lady looking at the eclipse, or the reformed addict like Brand, whose depth of despair caused him to wander into the arms of grace. The platform from which we engage is of critical importance, and curiosity is one place that can start the journey to an unfolding mystery that stirs the heart towards God. But people at their best are not only curious. They are, we discover, through the Google review, also compassionate. Compassion draws on the heartstrings of what it is to be human. It connects us with a very fundamental aspect of the human psyche. The how-to of 27 has shown again the desire of people to reach out beyond themselves. What is it about another person's pain that causes you and me to be so moved? But not only pain, also inequality. The generation that Google represents are libertarian by conviction. They live borderless lives and they have fluid imaginations. There is a great cry for justice coming through many of the slogans, sound bites, and speeches of the 2017 review. Social media, as we know, has given people a voice. Its platforms an opportunity to express them. The millennials and Gen Xers, who make up the greatest demographic of such media, do not carry the traditional values held by the Judeo-Christian mindset. But they do hold to many of the values inherent to their historic faith, as expressed in the desire for greater equality and justice in the world. Where this leaves the church is interesting. The video carries neither Christian voice nor symbol throughout its 2-minute duration. And yet it is searching deeply for the very things that the faith holds dear. The church is neither promoted nor persecuted in its commentary. It is simply neutralized. And maybe this is what we have to realize, that in the eyes of many, we are simply irrelevant. If I've dared to quote Brand as a prophet speaking from the wilderness of a broader sweep of spirituality, it is now to the more traditional voice of a conservative agitator who dares to raise his voice against the secularism and selfishness of our age that I end. In his New Year's speech, the Archbishop, Justin Welby, does what a good archbishop should do and speaks the message of grace and truth. We should use the new year to focus on compassion, not horror, he said, when he gave his interview to Radio 4 on New Year's Day. He knows, like us all, that such an appeal is universal because his comments delve deeply to the core of what it is to be human. And what it is to be human is to be made in the image of the divine. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love, says Psalm 145. Such words speak with clarity and are the starting premise of the Christian faith. Without the compassion of God, we are, indeed, without exception, all lost. And it is this compassion, embodied in the person of Jesus, that needs to be the foundation of missional work in the world ahead. Of Jesus, it was said that when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. It bodes the question, so where are the shepherds of today? How are we raising up our new emerging Christian leaders to be not great entrepreneurs, not great community development workers, not great communicators, not great political agitators? As important as all of those things may be, and as necessary as they are we raising up shepherds? People who can see with a measure of empathy and compassion and walk into the world of another and take that person by the hand to help them to walk to where waters are still so they can be refreshed and drink. Are we raising up, and where are we raising up the shepherds of a new day? Where is the compassion that can lead people to Christ? To my mind, the Christian apologetic has lost traction in the postmodern world because the background narrative upon which it was based has been washed away. What we must navigate is not the past, but the future. The issues of human sexuality, social injustice, women's rights are some of the subtle messages woven like a thread through the Google review. If we deal clumsily with these issues, showing either ignorance or arrogance, then we will simply be treated with the contempt we deserve. But if we can dig beneath the surface and engage with the person rather than the issue, then I believe we can still have validity. It was Mahatma Gandhi who said, "I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ." There are many times I feel torn for the church. I think it is hard for Western Christianity to know how to respond to the culture in which we live. The triumphalism of the 70s and 80s charismatic renewal has a hollow ring when we examine the real statistics and are prepared to face the facts. Yet all is not lost. Let's take our own city as an example. It is suggested that at least 10,000 believers gather together to worship every week in the city of Nottingham, maybe more. Much of the youth and children's work provided by the third sector has faith as its core motivation. Social justice, as spearheaded through an organisation like Nottingham Citizens, brings people together from many parts of society, including Muslim and Christian, and was born out of a collaborative effort of the city's larger churches to unite together for the common good. And here at Hope, we look around and we thank God for his blessings upon our lives and upon our community throughout 2017. For all the complexity in our world, people still need to know that they are valued and they are loved. The message of compassion for the church to reach out, to hang in, to go the extra mile is what will validate our words in 2018. It appears to me that seeking to find the right rhetoric, to show skill in winning an argument, to try and trump another person with our spirituality is a massive turnoff. If we are to stay viable, then we must learn to walk a different path. The Christ we follow spoke to his followers of how we should live. Blessed are the poor in spirit, he said, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The pathway of humility is the way of Christ. And would that we might have the strength to walk in such weakness. And how do we move forward? The answer is together. And what do we proclaim? That love has won. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.